The tension in Lavender Hill, just after the Cape Town graffiti unit officials removed a mural of the Palestinian flag today. The Metro says that proper processes were not followed at the council-owned building where it was put up. Authorities claim that residents have agreed to follow processes so that it can now be put up again. It comes as South Africa is preparing to present its case for genocidal intent against the state of Israel over alleged war crimes committed in Gaza. This will happen at the United Nations highest court at The Hague tomorrow. Well, Pretoria filed its papers late last month after more than 20,000 Palestinians were killed in Israeli air and sea as well as land attacks in just the last 3 months or so. That followed attacks by the Palestinian armed group Hamas on Israel in early October. That series of attacks led to the deaths of more than 1,200 people. A further more than 200 people in Israel were taken captive by Hamas. Others were held in Gaza. For more on this now, let's speak to the South African Justice Department spokesperson, Chrispin Phiri, who's actually not too far from The Hague, I'd imagine, Chrispin, tonight, because the team has arrived there ahead of the hearing, which begins tomorrow and will run over 2 days. Are you all set for the hearings?
Absolutely. The team has arrived, and the delegation, which will be led by Minister Lamula, had an occasion to speak to the President of the Republic, and he had very encouraging words to the team and really assured them that the nation is behind them. But most importantly, that this case is probably a case that is important for humanity's sake. As you know, Tembegile, we are a nation that is based on a very strong constitution, which is derived from the principles of Ubuntu, amongst others. And this is what we want to assert in the global arena. We do believe that the multilateral institutions that we are seeing in the world must work for everybody, regardless of their race, creed, or gender. All multilateral institutions must work for the furtherance of humanity, and we believe that this case will achieve just that.
And Minister Lamula, of course, will participate quite directly in the proceedings tomorrow, if I've got it right. Are you able to give us an idea of what it is that he will tell the court?
Well, I think we want to leave that for the court, and we will really then respect the court process. But in essence, we will be outlining our case, outlining how we've seen in our 84-page case, you've seen how we have seen genocidal statements being echoed by prominent Israeli leaders. And this has led to the 23,000 plus killings that we have seen thus far, sophisticated weapons being used against innocent people, civilians in particular. And we think that that is a very unjust act. But most importantly, also, Tembegile, we must state that the South African government has also condemned the actions of Hamas that took place on the 7th of October. And what we will be outlining is that what we are seeing now being meted out by Israel is not a justification at all.
You mentioned Hamas. Some of the reaction from within Israel has been that basically what is happening now with South Africa taking this action is a provision by the state of South Africa of political and legal cover for Hamas after the atrocities the group committed in Israel on October 7th. How will you deal with that accusation against Pretoria?
Yeah, we've seen that trope. Anyone who opposes Zionism is labeled anti-Semitic or is labeled as a Hamas sympathizer. So it's nothing new. It's a classic trope that is used by people who are determined to annihilate these Palestinians in particular. So it's not something that really requires a sophisticated response. It's a label that is attached to a very sophisticated legal argument. I mean, we have an 84-page argument that sets out in very, very persuasive detail why what we are seeing in Palestine in Gaza in particular is genocidal intent.
And at the highest level of American diplomacy, you may have seen the comments as well. Antony Blinken was in Israel yesterday, the U.S. Secretary of State, basically saying the South African case of alleged genocide against Israel is a meritless distraction. How do you respond to that?
I mean, our response is quite simple. You can't have a 3-word response to an 84-page document. If people are going to say that our case is not persuasive, they have a duty to also pen that in the same way that we have tried to persuade the court. They would too have the same duty to try and persuade society that what we have put down meticulously in 84 pages is meritless. But they don't do so. They just label it as what they say, meritless and what have you. which in our view is not a way to respond to such a comprehensive argument.
And Chrispin, should this matter go in South Africa's favor, has government discussed the implications for its relationship with Israel? We know at this stage that there are tensions at a diplomatic level. Trade, am I right, is still ongoing between the two countries. What will this mean? Will those relationships be severed altogether, completely cut? Should this case go in Pretoria's favor or otherwise?
Typically, the Director General for DIRCO has been on your platform, and he has articulated on many times. We understand the implications of this action. But what is important for us here is to assert the rule of law. Everyone must be bound by the same set of laws, whether it's a country from the west or whether it's a country from the east, north or south. We are all bound by the same rules, and that is ultimately how we ensure that we live in a rule-based society.
But can Pretoria, in good faith and good conscience, have any kind of relationship with a country it's basically accused of genocide?
We are parties to the convention, so is Israel, and that is why we have to ensure that this very convention that we have both ratified and applied in our domestic laws is upheld. So it's a legal duty that exists, and it's something that's why we brought it to this court, to ensure that this convention is upheld.
I understand the legal duty, which is why you've gone to the court. What I'm trying to get to is what happens post the court's outcome. Do you then
What happens post the court's outcome is that the rule of law is either restored or there's clarification that what we are seeing is not what we believe is the case. And then we know that the rule of law either way is restored.
And what will be the implications for the relationship that existed before this latest round of bombing in Gaza?
The relationships cannot exist outside the permutations of the rule of law.
Will it come to an end, Chrispin?
That will be for DIRCO to go into details, but of course, our relations are based on what we believe is a rule-based society. So what is good for the geese will always be good for the gander.
And I'm curious then, Chrispin, given that the likes of the United States, who have been very clear in terms of their allyship with Israel, and even though they've called for a minimization, if you will, of civilian harm in Gaza, they continue to assist Israel's military effort and indeed to endorse it and shield the country from efforts such as yours to take it to court, right? Has there been any effort, I wonder, diplomatically to persuade South Africa, perhaps through back channels, to change course or abandon this matter?
Well, I think that would be for the Department of International Relations to outline quite clearly. But what we are here to do is to outline the legal basis for what we believe is a violation of this convention and the diplomatic issues that do prevail and how governments persuade each other diplomatically around why we take the actions to do. The Department of International Relations is the best place to speak on.
And you've laid it out in terms of your case quite clearly in those dozens of pages what South Africa is seeking from the court, among which is an order basically for a cessation of the bombing of Gaza that's currently been going on since October, right? What would ultimate justice for the Palestinians look like for South Africa?
The restoration of the two-state solution and a dialogue, peace, ultimately, where we're able to ensure that both Israel and Palestine coexist in peaceful means. And that is the ultimate quest of justice. But in this case, the halting of the genocidal acts that we're seeing being meted out in Gaza is the first prize.
Chrispin Phiri, good to speak to you, spokesperson for the South African Justice Department.